The skies over Zaytralis burned red as enemy cruisers cracked through the clouds like angry gods. The war had come without warning. One day, the stars were peaceful. The next, fire rained from them. The royal palace shook under the assault golden. Walls trembling as sirens screamed across the capital. People ran through marble halls, dragging children and injured behind them, trying to escape the fall of their empire. Princess Kalira stood at the highest tower, eyes wide as she watched the sky tear open. She had always believed her father's armies were strong enough to protect them. But now, fear crawled inside her chest. Her guards shouted at her to follow them. She nodded, but her legs refused to move. The palace gates burst as enemy machines rolled in, firing without mercy. The blue and gold banners of the House of Vaith burned into ash. Kalira's handmaid was pulled away by the crowd. A guard shoved Kalira down a hidden stairwell, yelling that the king had ordered her escape. That was the last time she saw her home. Below the surface of Zaytralis, bunkers held refugees in dim light. Kalira made it as far as the third shelter before it collapsed. Trapped and bleeding, she crawled through smoke and rubble, calling for help. None came. She believed she would die there, buried under her own kingdom, but something unexpected happened. A voice echoed through the dust, foreign yet calm. "I got you," it said, human. She had never seen one before, not in real life. He pulled her out with trembling hands, ignoring the flames and falling stone. He was hurt too, but still he smiled. The human's name was Damon, a soldier from Earth, stranded when his shuttle was shot down. He had no reason to help her, but he did. Every night they hid, every day they moved. He shared his rations with her, gave her his only blanket, and treated her wounds. He didn't ask who she was. He just protected her. Kalira watched him fight off bandits and enemy drones. His body was weak compared to Zaytrali warriors, but his spirit was not. She saw fire in him, something rare even among her people. She began to trust him. Then she began to rely on him. In time, she started to feel something deeper. Back in the palace ruins, the alien king mourned his daughter. His scouts searched the wastelands but found nothing. Only her torn cloak near a crater. The king stood alone in the war room, a broken man who had lost his heir. He blamed himself. The people wept. The hope of Zaytralis was gone. The war dragged on. Damon and Kalira crossed battlefields, avoided patrols, and kept each other alive. She taught him alien languages. He taught her how to survive without power or protection. He called her Kay. She never corrected him. When she cried at night, he said nothing. He just held her hand. Months passed. Kalira no longer looked like a princess. Her gown was torn, her crown long buried. But Damon still looked at her like she was someone special. One night, while hiding inside an old transport wreck, she asked why he kept risking his life for her. He only said, "Because you would have done the same for me." One morning, they reached the mountains near the southern border. Smoke rose. Behind them, ahead was a rebel camp. Kalira could see the flag of her people waving beside a human symbol. They were allies now. Damon nodded and helped her walk. Her leg was weak from a wound, but her eyes burned with determination. As they approached, soldiers raised weapons. Damon stepped in front of her, arms wide. Kalira stood taller, pulling back her hood. Gasps echoed. "That's the princess!" Someone cried. The guard dropped his weapon. Kalira gave her name, her title, and pointed to Damon. "This human saved me. I owe him my life." The message was sent across the galaxy. The heir of Zaytralis lived. The king received it on his knees, praying before the stars. His hands shook as he read the signal. His daughter was alive, and she had returned with a human protector. Asterisk. The gates of the southern outpost opened wide as the princess stepped through. Soldiers bowed, Officers stared in disbelief, and whispers spread like wildfire. Many thought she was a ghost, a memory brought to life. But Kalira stood firm, holding Damon's hand tightly. She had changed, and she knew it. The war had stripped away her softness, but given her something stronger. Inside the command tent, General Tavrik rose from his chair, his old eyes wide. "Your Highness," he said with trembling lips. "We believed you were gone." She looked him in the eye and replied, "I nearly was. This man saved me. I want him protected." Damon shifted uncomfortably beside her, unsure of his place. Kalira didn't let go of his hand. Medical officers checked her wounds, but she waved them off. "I need to speak with my father," she said. The generals exchanged nervous looks. One of them stepped forward and said, "The king has not spoken to anyone in weeks. He believes the throne is cursed since your death." Kalira's jaw tightened. "Then it's time I broke that curse." A transmission was sent. It took hours for the encrypted signal to reach the royal palace deep in the mountains. The king's advisors hesitated to show it to him. He sat alone in his chamber, staring at the old crown of his daughter. When the message finally played, he dropped it. His knees hit the floor. He had to see her with his own eyes. Kalira and Damon were escorted to a diplomatic vessel. The trip was silent. She looked out the window, watching the burned world pass by. Damon sat beside her but didn't speak. His hand stayed close, but he didn't touch her. He felt out of place now. He was just a soldier. She was royalty. Future queen. When they landed, royal guards in black and gold waited. The moment Kalira stepped out, gasps erupted. People knelt. The old captain of the palace guard, who had once trained her to ride a battle beast, cried openly. She nodded to him. Then she turned to Damon and said, "Come with me. Don't leave my side." The king stood in the throne room, eyes sunken, his beard longer than Kalira remembered. He did not speak when she entered. She walked up slowly, every step echoing in the vast hall. At last she stopped in front of him. She whispered, "Father." He reached forward and touched her face, as if unsure she was real. Then he pulled her into his arms. No one spoke for a long time. The king held her, tears falling onto her shoulder. He looked over her shoulder at Damon, then pulled back. "Who is he?" he asked. "The reason I'm alive," Kalira said. "He is a soldier, a protector, a friend." The king studied Damon, his eyes unreadable. "A human?" he asked. "Yes," she answered. Royal advisors gathered, whispering. Some frowned at Damon's presence. Others watched Kalira with wide eyes, like seeing a star return from the dark. The king raised a hand and silenced them. "This man brought my daughter home. He will be treated with the highest honor," he said. Damon bowed, unsure how to respond. Kalira was given her chamber back, cleaned and restored, but she did not sleep. She sat by the window, remembering the ruins, the cold nights, the pain. She wasn't that girl anymore, and Damon wasn't just a soldier. He had saved her heart too. She whispered his name and he appeared at the door, unsure if he was allowed to come in. "Sit with me," she said. He obeyed. The moonlight fell across her face. "Do you think your people will ever trust mine?" she asked. Damon shrugged. "Some might, some won't, but they'll listen to you. You're not just a princess now, you're a survivor." She looked at him and said, "We survived together." In the days that followed, Kalira spoke before the High Council. She told them the truth of what she saw, how the war had broken her people, how unity was their only hope. She asked for a formal alliance with Earth. Some were shocked, others angry, but none could deny her strength. Not after what she had lived through. Damon stood quietly behind her, watching as she fought not with weapons, but with words. She had learned the human way of survival. She used her voice, her heart. And when the council voted to send ambassadors to Earth, she looked Back at Damon and smiled. The king called Damon to the royal chamber, alone. Damon stood straight, expecting distrust. But the king poured him a glass of fire wine and said, "You protected what I could not. For that, I owe you more than I can give." Damon said nothing. The king continued, "Do you love her?" Damon did not hesitate. "Yes, asterisk." The king stared at Damon in silence. His old eyes showed no anger, only sadness and depth. "She is my only child," he said slowly. "If you had lost her like I did, you would understand the weight of her name." Damon nodded but said nothing. He didn't come to take her throne. He only wanted to stand beside her. "I don't care where you are from," the king continued. "But this world is filled with eyes that hate your kind. You will be tested. You will be blamed. Not for what you've done, but for who you are." Damon understood. He had seen those eyes already. But he didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid," he replied. "I'll stay if she wants me to." Outside the palace, news of the princess's return spread like wildfire across the stars. Crowds gathered in the cities. Children carried her crest. Old veterans saluted the sky. The people needed a symbol. Kalira became that light. And standing quietly behind her, always close, was the human they called the Protector. But not everyone was pleased. In the deep chambers of the council, whispers turned to warnings. "A human in the palace?" one elder growled. "They are allies, not family." Another said, "He saved her, yes, but now she speaks with his tongue. What else has she learned?" From him? Their voices grew colder with fear. Kalira stood in her chamber, dressing for the ceremony that would mark her return as rightful heir. She wore a flowing dress of deep blue, the color of Zaytralis' peace. As her maids tied the final ribbon, she looked in the mirror and whispered, "Will they ever see us the way we see each other?" Damon, standing behind her, met her eyes in the glass. "They don't have to," he said. "You do." She turned and placed her hand on his chest. "You were never just a protector to me," she said softly. "You became my strength. For a moment, nothing else mattered. Not war. Not titles. Not blood. Just the memory of nights spent hiding in burnt-out cities, holding hands beneath ash. At the ceremony, nobles and soldiers filled the grand hall. The king raised a royal staff and declared his daughter alive, strong, and the future queen. Cheers filled the air. Kalira stepped forward, but instead of a speech, she called Damon to her side. Gasps spread. She didn't care. "This man stood by me when no one else did. Let the galaxy remember that." Later that night, Kalira stood on the palace balcony, the stars bright above her. Damon joined her, quiet as always. Below them, the city lights flickered. "Do you ever miss Earth?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said. "But I'd rather be here with you." She nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. The wind was soft, and for once, the night was peaceful. Far away, in the shadow systems, enemies watched. A warlord of the Broken Rings received the footage of Kalira's return. His robotic eye scanned her face. "The daughter lives," he growled, "and the humans grow closer to the throne. That union must not happen." He slammed his fist on the table. "Send the assassin. End the Protector." The next day, a gift arrived at the palace gates. A sculpture of stardust stone, beautifully carved in the shape of a phoenix. The guards scanned it and found nothing. It was placed in the royal garden. That night, Damon passed by it during his walk. The sculpture shimmered. Then it moved. Cloaked figures stepped from the shadows, blades in both hands. Damon turned just in time to block the first strike with his arm. Pain shot through him. He fought back hard, fists landing solid blows. The attacker was faster than anything he had faced before, but he didn't back down. He had something to protect now. The palace alarms rang. Guards rushed in. The attacker vanished in smoke, leaving behind only a thin wound across Damon's chest. Kalira found him leaning against the wall, breathing hard. "Why didn't you call for help?" she cried. He looked up at her and smiled weakly. "Because I knew you'd come." The king visited Damon in the healing chamber. He looked at the blood on the bandages and said, "You risked your life for her again." Damon shrugged. "It's what I do." The king nodded slowly. "Then I will not stop what is already written in your hearts. But know this, there are enemies who will never accept you. Stay close to her, or they will try again." That night, Kalira sat by Damon's bedside. She didn't speak. She just held his hand, her thumb gently tracing the lines of his palm. The stars outside the window felt closer than ever. She whispered, "You don't have to protect me alone anymore. I'll fight with you now." The attempt on Damon's life was seen as a direct threat to the throne. The royal security forces doubled their patrols. Kalira ordered scanners installed in every hall, every gate, every hidden corner of the palace. But deep down, she knew it wasn't enough. The enemy had sent a message. They weren't afraid of attacking inside her home. Damon healed slowly. The wound on his chest left a deep scar, but he didn't complain. Kalira visited him every day. She brought him books, strange alien fruits, and once, a flower from their old hideout in the southern ruins. He smiled more now, but his eyes always checked the corners of the room before he relaxed. The king summoned his top advisors to a war council. "If the enemy wants war," he said, "then let them see what happens when a father is pushed too far." Kalira stood beside him, no longer silent. She mapped enemy supply lines, explained hidden routes she had seen during her escape. She was no longer a princess. She was becoming a warrior. The generals listened. Damon sat in the corner, watching her speak with power. He had seen her scared. He had seen her broken. Now he saw her strong, and it made his heart ache in a way he didn't understand. She had become more than royalty. She had become a symbol. The alliance with Earth grew stronger. Human engineers arrived with new shields and weapons. Zaytralis tech fused with Terran metal. Together, they built something new, faster, smarter, deadlier. Kalira visited the foundries and told the workers, "This is not a war of revenge. This is a war to protect those who cannot protect themselves." But the enemy wasn't idle. In the dark regions of the Void Crescent, fleets gathered. The warlord who had sent the assassin now trained a new force. Hybrid soldiers, part machine, part living matter, programmed to hunt the princess and the protector. They had no fear. They had no mercy. And they were already moving. Kalira and Damon stood in the royal garden the night before the first battle. "I can feel it coming," she said. "The sky has that silence again." Damon looked at the stars. "Same silence I felt the day your palace fell." She nodded. "I remember. I was standing at the tower. I thought the world was ending." He smiled gently. "And now look where we are." She reached out and took his hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, promise me something." He raised an eyebrow. "Anything." She said, "Don't let me become someone who forgets where she came from." Damon didn't speak. He just pulled her close and rested his forehead against hers. The next day, war returned. The enemy attacked 3 outposts at once. Their ships cut through the skies like black lightning. The royal forces, now strengthened with Earth's firepower, struck back hard. For the first time, humans and aliens fought side by side under the same banner. The protector and the princess led the charge. Kalira wore armor woven with memory cloth, light as air but strong as steel. Damon fought beside her, rifle in hand, moving with silent precision. The battlefield burned around them, but they stayed close. When one fell, the other pulled them up. They had made a promise, and they would keep it together. The battle lasted for hours. Explosions shook the mountains. The enemy sent in the hybrid assassins. Kalira faced one alone near the ridge, her sword humming with energy. It moved like a shadow, striking with deadly speed. She blocked and countered, breathing hard, refusing to back down. Then she saw Damon bleeding behind her, surrounded by two more. Something inside her broke loose. A fire born, not of rage but of love. She moved faster than she ever had. Her blade sang through the air, cutting the machines down one by one. When it was over, she ran to Damon, pulled him close, and held him in the middle of the burning field. "You're not allowed to die," she said firmly. Not today. They returned to the palace victorious. The enemy had been pushed back, but the cost was high. Hundreds had died. The king held a ceremony for the fallen, placing a starstone for each soul lost. Kalira stood in silence as names were read. When Damon placed a starstone himself, the people watched, not as a human, but as a hero. Later that night, the king visited Kalira alone. He handed her a sealed crystal. "Your mother wore this before she became queen," he said. Inside was a glowing blue pendant, pulsing with soft light. It's time the people saw their future. Kalira held it to her chest. "And what of Damon?" she asked. "He is not of our blood." The king gave a slow nod. "But he is of your heart." The skies of Zaytralis calmed, but tension remained like a shadow behind every star. Though the enemy had been pushed back, the silence that followed felt heavier than war. Kalira stood on the palace balcony, wearing the glowing pendant her father gave her. She ran her fingers over it, remembering her mother's stories. Now those stories were hers to carry. Damon trained with the palace guards every day. He moved differently, now more cautious, more aware. After the second assassination attempt, he never went unarmed. Even in peace, he expected danger. Kalira noticed. "You're always watching," she said. He smiled. "Because I know they are too." She didn't ask who they were. She already knew. Talk spread through the city, rumors of Kalira's growing bond with the human. Some praised it as a symbol of hope. Others whispered fear. "A human consort," they said. "Will the future of Zaytralis be half alien?" Kalira ignored the voices. She had faced worse. What mattered was that Damon had stayed when even her own blood had scattered. In the war hall, Kalira sat beside her father as envoys from Earth arrived. She greeted them in perfect Terran dialect. Damon stood behind her in ceremonial armor. One ambassador leaned toward another and whispered, "She sounds more like us than them." Damon caught the words. He didn't react, but Kalira did. "Maybe. I sound like someone who knows both sides," she said. The new treaty was signed. Earth and Zaytralis would become permanent allies, not just in war, but in rebuilding. Technology, medicine, and culture would flow between the worlds. The princess had done what no king before her could. She had opened a path through blood and sorrow and turned it into light, but far beyond the borders of the alliance, the warlord of the broken rings built something darker. A ship the size of a moon. Powered by black core fusion and stolen alien minds, it drifted in silence, waiting. Its name was Ashbirth. Its only purpose was to erase the royal line of Zaytralis. From the stars, Kalira and Damon visited the memorial garden one evening, where names of the fallen glowed gently under crystal trees. She knelt beside the name of her old handmaid. Damon placed a stone beside it. "She saved you," he said. Kalira nodded. "And I couldn't save her." Damon looked at her. "You saved all of this. Don't forget that." That night, the stars blinked wrong. Alarms rang across the observatories. Ashbirth had entered their system. It made no threats, sent no warnings. It simply moved forward. The king called for an emergency council. "This is no army. This is annihilation." Kalira stood, eyes cold. "Then we give it no welcome." Ships launched. Human and alien vessels. Side by side, rising through the clouds. Damon flew aboard Kalira's command ship, seated at her right. She wore the pendant. He wore her crest. They didn't speak much during the flight. Words were no longer needed between them. They only needed to survive. Ashburth attacked without sound. Its weapons bent light, cut through shields, ignored gravity. One strike destroyed an entire carrier. But Kalira did not retreat. She gave orders with calm precision. Damon coordinated ground units, marking weak points. For every blast they took, they returned too. For every life lost, they remembered the cost. Inside the ship, Kalira led a strike team toward the core. Damon stayed close, pulse weapon drawn. They moved through long dark halls, filled with strange humming walls. "It's alive," Kalira whispered. "This ship ... it's built with minds." They heard the cries in the walls, voices calling for help that would never come. The core was a sphere of black glass, beating like a heart. When Kalira reached it, the ship screamed. A defense unit rose, twisted limbs, no face, all blades. Kalira lunged first. Damon backed her, his shots carving paths through the monster. They fought side by side, silent, deadly. When Kalira struck the final blow, the sphere cracked. The entire ship began to fall. They ran through collapsing corridors. Damon was limping from a deep leg wound. Kalira refused to leave him. "Go!" he shouted. "You're the heir." She grabbed his face and said, "I'm not leaving you behind. You didn't leave me." She pulled him through the escape hatch as fire tore the walls apart. Their shuttle ejected seconds before Ashburth exploded. The shockwave pushed them through space, tumbling and burning. Then silence. The stars returned. The war was over. Back at the palace, medics treated Damon's wound. Kalira never left his side. The people gathered outside the palace, chanting her name. She walked to the balcony with Damon beside her. "This alliance was built in pain," she said. "But today, we start something new, not just peace, but unity." The morning after the final battle was calm. The air smelled of fresh stone and new life. Kalira walked through the palace halls with no guards, no fear. The war was over, but the work was not. Peace wasn't just an idea, it had to be built. Brick by brick, heart by heart, Damon sat in the royal garden, his legs still healing. Children watched him from a distance. One of them walked up, holding a drawing. "Are you really the human who saved the princess?" Damon looked at the paper, a stick figure of him and Kalira standing under stars. He smiled and nodded. "She saved me too." Inside the council chamber, voices were louder than ever. Some nobles pushed for tradition. "She cannot rule with an outsider," one barked. Others shouted him down. "She ended the war. She brought Earth to our side." Kalira entered the room and raised her hand. Silence followed. "You are all arguing over the past. I am building the future." She stood tall before the royal crest. "I am your heir, daughter of this land. And this man beside me gave more than his blood. He gave me hope when I had none. If you cannot trust him, then you do not trust me. And if you cannot trust me, then you should not follow me." The chamber froze. Then one by one, counselors bowed. The oldest among them stepped forward and laid his staff at her feet. "Princess Kalira of Zaytralis," he said, "you are no longer just the child of the king. You are the strength of our people." Others followed. The choice had been made. Later that day, Kalira stood before her father in the great hall. The old king, tired but proud, held the crown in both hands. "I have ruled long," he said softly, "but your time has come. Your pain made you strong. Your choices made us whole." He placed the crown on her head. She bowed, not as a child, but as a leader. In the evening, a quiet celebration was held, no fireworks, no music, just lights in the sky and food shared among soldiers, citizens, and diplomats. Kalira moved among them, speaking to everyone. When she found Damon sitting near the edge of the garden, she sat beside him. He smiled. "You wear that crown better than I imagined." She leaned on his shoulder and whispered, "It feels heavy, but not alone. He reached for her hand. "What happens now?" he asked. She looked up at the stars. "Now we stop surviving. Now we start living," he nodded. "With you?" She squeezed his hand gently. "Always with me." Months passed. Zaytralis changed. New schools were built. Humans and aliens studied together. Soldiers from Earth joined the Royal Guard. Trade routes opened to distant galaxies. And at the center of it all stood the Queen and her protector, no longer just survivors, but symbols of something greater. Then war. One quiet morning, Kalira stood beside a glowing lake at the edge of the capital. Damon walked up behind her, holding something in his hand. "You dropped this back in the ruins," he said, opening his palm. It was her old pendant, cracked but still glowing. "I found it while they rebuilt the tunnels." She took it slowly, eyes soft. "I thought it was lost." He smiled. "So did one. But some things don't want to be forgotten." She looked at him then, truly looked. He had changed to no longer just a soldier. He was part of this world now. Part of her. "I never asked," she said, voice low. "Do you regret staying?" He shook his head. "Not once. You gave me something no war ever did. A reason to fight. A reason to stay." She leaned in closer. "Then stay forever." He didn't answer with words. He just kissed her, gentle and sure. The people of Zaytralis would tell the story for generations. Of a daughter who was lost in the flames of war. Of a human who reached into those flames and carried her back. And of a love that rose from ruins to reshape the stars. At the palace gate stood a statue, carved in blue crystal. It showed Kalira and Damon standing side by side, not as ruler and guard, but as equals, as partners, as hope,